Hey there, Facebook fam. I'm sorry, Facebook and YouTube fam. So along with these videos, a buddy of mine wanted me to share my ideology, and I thought that was a good idea because what's more important than the body than the mind? So when I was growing up, I had some family members that had been incarcerated and wrongfully at that. And so I had been forced to bounce around from home to home and live with different families and be baptized in every one of their religions and participate in their cultural lifestyle. I only found some small differentiations, different seasonings on their food, different process whenever they're going about participating in their religious rituals and stuff. But I just want to say this. So, one of my jobs, besides being a martial artist and studying martial arts, which wasn't really a job, it's a task I put myself to. One of the jobs I did was I was in the military, and I traveled to Iraq, and I participated in the 06-08 Iraq war. I also have worked at a prison and a few different prisons in the United States. I went around and traveled around the United States to help train law enforcement in defensive tactics for my martial arts teacher. He used to be a Los Angeles Sheriff Deputy. And nowadays I do whatever work I can because the city I live in is a smaller city, and the rhetoric from the Trump campaign and presidency has not done very well for people that are even mixed, because I'm mixed. My dad's Puerto Rican and my mom's white. My last name gives it away. Maybe a little bit of the nose too, the Italian ancestry. But yeah, I went around the nation training law enforcement. One of the things I heard for sure, and bear in mind, during this period of time I was training law enforcement, I was religious. One of the last religions I studied was Mormonism. Now I kind of delve into the different ones just to see where they're coming from, because I found out that none of the religions, idols, or deities are real. None of them are real. Not Buddha, not Krishna, not Allah, not God. None of those things exist. You know what exists? Human beings exist. Human beings exist. You read any chapter in the Bible, every single one of them was written by man or a human. What is that? Because God can't write? No. So I also study forensic science for school, and throughout my studies, I had realized that the solar system, our example for us to be aware of, is in our solar system between Mars and Jupiter is the asteroid belt, and whenever a star in general explodes, it becomes a nebula. Like if you look at the Orion constellation, you look down towards, like, say, the left knee area. If you're facing it, it's actually Orion's right knee. That is a nebula, and that's a previously exploded star, and its material there, under gravity, starts to coalesce and bring material together. Some of the material becomes stars, and around the stars and its gravity and its influence, as it revolves, it starts to create an accretion disk, and that material smashes into each other, and then it becomes planets. Evidence that our solar system went through some similar kind of change is found between Mars and Jupiter, which are referred to as planetismals, which is the asteroid belt. Okay, I know that's a lot, and it's hard for people to take. So from further inquiry and studying, it seems that when a star explodes, maybe it's hydrogen, like our stars, maybe hydrogen and helium right now. When it explodes and it starts to expand out first and it smacks into its incompressible core, what comes out, the ejection out of that, is all the material you can think of, gold, silver, all the elements from the periodic table, for example. And of course, you know that we mix those now and make polymers to make stronger materials so that we can create spaceships that can safely protect our astronauts in space from gamma rays and such as they travel outside of our planet, and the forces that are between here and there that could damage the internal organs or or tissue of a living human being. So in Genesis, it says that God created the world in 6 days, but then he rested on the seventh. Well, our Hubble Space Telescope, and now we have up the James Webb Space Telescope, has looked into these nebulas and found these stars and gathered data inside of these nebulas where these stars are forming and the material around them in the accretion disk and forming planets. And it says that it takes roughly 10 million years for a star to form, and roughly 1 to 10 million years for the planetismals around it to create, like, say, a planet. So this 6-day scenario that God created the Earth in 6 days, I mean, maybe he's God, right? And then people say nobody knows God's time. I used to be religious. So in chapter 3, verse 8 of second Peter, it says, "Do not be ignorant of this one thing, that for man, 1,000 days, no, for God 1 day is but 1,000 years to man." So, I mean, given how our data shows us that how planets are created and so forth, I think it's safe to say, given that all the chapters are written by man, and that science tells us that it takes much longer for a planet to form, and there's nothing out there seemingly making planets, that this planet is its 4.5 billion years old. It's claimed to be due to radiometric dating and carbon dating and other types of forms of age, getting the age of the universe. Along with that, I'd like to say real fast that in Rome, they had the Nicene Council, and the Nicene Council sat together. There were a group of men that stopped persecuting the Christians and decided to have a debate on whether Jesus' birth was an immaculate conception, whether God placed him somehow inside of Mary's stomach, or whether Mary actually conceived a child through normal means. Let's take a step back also. That's just an example of an area of time when the Bible was altered. We're going to take a step back. The beginning of Genesis again. So Adam and Eve had a child. I'm sure with all this editing, people try to defend by saying that Cain and Abel had slept with some women from the land of Nod, and that's how they created their kids. But if Adam and Eve really were the first man and woman, and then when this first became a debate and maybe things were changed, think about who Cain and Abel really would have had to sleep with to procreate and to create the population on the earth, to help in doing their part. That had to either sleep with their mother or their sister. And that's incest, and a thing that a lot of Christians today are against. And yet, we have religions, we have them practicing the religion and worshiping, which I used to be a Christian and not aware of this, because back in the day this used to be blasphemy and you could get killed and sent to jail and stuff for this kind of thinking or scientific thinking. There are other examples of how this doesn't add up. But right now, currently, it's really funny that especially like, say, Texas, like whenever the Pilgrims came over to America and they're creating America, they wanted supposedly some kind of freedom of religion. But whenever Texas did the Battle of the Alamo, supposedly Mexico was trying to change the laws here so that whoever lived in their territory, which had have included Texas at the time, would have to be Catholic. And so Texas went to war with it, and now they're trying to, by covert means, make Texas a Christian state and make America Christian. But that's not even right, because not everybody is Christian. Freedom of religion, remember? That's one of our reasons for coming here. And it's made up. Religion's made up, so that's not cool to be basing our choices in reality on something that's made up. And to be pushing Christianity when not everybody is Christian. Then Texas, for example, remember I said I studied forensic science last semester. It seems that Hispanics are 47% of Texans, 45% are Caucasians, and 12% is African American. I know those numbers don't add up to 100%, but I don't understand exactly how these things work. Sometimes I never did do this math. But let's say this. there's still more Hispanics and African Americans than Caucasians in Texas. But our legislature is made up of mostly Caucasian evangelical males. There's a problem there, right? Because it's not a reflection of our diversity. Neither is our United States government currently. So I'd like to leave you at that, and now that I've shared my beliefs, I hope that makes it a little bit easier to follow me. And then if not, you're not the people I seek to help. And if you are, then you would listen and maybe research what I've researched, because I have researched what you have researched, which dealt with religion. And I've had my personal relationships with God. It was me and my own intuition. Man writes not because of the influence of God, but because of his own intuition. Abraham, let's take a step back for a second. Abraham, his wife Sarai couldn't have a baby, so she told him to sleep with her Egyptian handmaiden. He did. They had a child. Later, Sarai, his wife, could have a child. She said, get rid of that woman. Abraham comes back and says that God told him that it was okay to get rid of that woman and to send her on her way with her son Ishmael, their son Ishmael. Ishmael now is buried with his wife near the Kaaba. I think it's somewhere over there in Saudi Arabia where the Muslims go and they do their prayer and they walk around the big black box, the Kaaba, which inside is supposed to contain the body of Muhammad. Each region has its own religious beliefs to steer its people towards the path of whoever wrote the scriptures to better their people. Okay, I think we all need to come together and base life off of scientific evidence, which was helped due to the creation of math with the help from the Greeks. And then now Christianity is trying to say that everything is because of them, because of God. And it's not true. That is set conquerors and conquered people, such as the Indians here in America, and of course African Americans, But let's leave it at that for now. All right? If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to Dragon's Blood Production, and thank you for listening in.